Right, and we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. Very, very interesting squad and team that has been announced for this weekend. Probably a couple of surprises, actually. And to be honest, I'm surprised at how many surprises we actually managed to get into this team announcement. So we've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to get through. We've got a lot to discuss, and the press conference is currently happening. So we do have a bit of insight with regards to certain selections and two very important updates, which obviously explains quite a bit. But as I said, there's a lot to discuss here. I'm just going to give you guys a few minutes to sort of look at the team and sort of get to grips with exactly what we're looking at here. And then I've got a poll running which says, are you happy with the 23? Which, weirdly enough, it's always about 80% of people that are happy, and then 20% aren't, and then the 20% usually don't say anything about why they're not happy. Or, for example, they'll say things like, where's Malcolm Marx? And you're going, well, he's not in the country and stuff. But yes. So, yeah, I'm quite surprised by it, to be honest. Just getting a couple of feedback from the press conference. So let's get this going, shall we? So what are the big selections? The big for me. No, my cushion's falling off. The biggest selection that I think is quite surprising is no Jaden Hendrikse, and I can now confirm he is fit, he is ready, and he's available, and he has not been picked. That for me is a very, very big call to make. Let's be honest, I think a year ago, we kind of almost thought that Jaden Hendrikse was going to be starting for the Boks potentially at the World Cup with the kind of his current trajectory. And all of a sudden, he's very likely not going to go. I don't see how he does go. How do you pick someone who has not played a single minute of Springbok rugby this year and has not played any rugby for 6 months? You know, the only players who at this stage are potentially going to go to the World Cup without having played in the last 4 games are Siya Kolisi, Andre Pod, Oxenchair. Those are seasoned Bok campaigners. You know, those are 2 players who played over 50 caps, for example, and Oxenchair, who's been very well established since British and Irish Lions. So I'm very, very interested in the fact that Jaden Hendrikse has not been picked. And I wonder if that suddenly opens the door for Grant Williams or whether it's still closed, because I personally think that at one stage it was, you know, Faf and Jaden were 1 and 2, and then Kobus Reinach was probably almost down at number 3 with regards to, you know, suitability to the game plan. And he would potentially could actually be the one battling out against the likes of a Herschel Yankees and a Grant Williams. And that's, you know, that battle seems to not actually include Hendrikse at the moment. So I think almost sudden it's almost like Kobus Reinach, Grant Williams, Faf de Klerk could be our preferred 3 scrum halves, which I wouldn't have picked a couple of months ago. So that is a very strange selection for me. I really thought we would see Jaden Hendrikse this weekend. And you got to feel for the guy. I mean, he was part of the squad. He'd worked himself back from injury. And then his father died and he had to leave the squad. And I think he would have played against Australia. And if he played well, I think he would have played against one of these Argentinian sides. So he would have had 2 games to really reaffirm the fact that he is the right player. And he was robbed of that chance. And it's not his fault, it's not the Boks' fault, but it's amazing how circumstances can change things. So that is quite a big selection. Kobus Reinach starting, then Herschel Yankees off the bench. A big opportunity for Herschel Yankees, who I think the last 2 months of the URC look back to his best, to be fair. I'm not even actually mad at the fact that he's playing. Because I think that he did work himself back into really good form. I don't think he's going to go to the World Cup. I wouldn't take him ahead of a Kobus Reinach or a Grant Williams, for example. But I do think that he looked more the player that was at the World Cup last time. The front row for me is actually also one of the most interesting sort of selections. First of all, you've got Bongi Manambi, who is going to captain the side. Interesting in then Salk in the fact that Lukanya is there, but they very much like to have someone who's either a forward or sort of fly half, for example, or loose forward that's kind of quite close to the game. So I think a lot of that sort of will be to do with the fact that Bongi Manambi is, as a hooker, right there when it comes to the scrums, right there for the lineouts, kind of close to the referee at all times. You wouldn't sort of not pick him as a sort of a natural captain, though, would you? You kind of look at that, but you look at the pack and you think that who are the other options? Maybe a Trevor, maybe a Franco Mostert. But Lukhanyo for me is the obvious candidate to captain the side. So it is interesting that they've gone with Bongi and Manambi. What is also quite interesting is the props, and not so much the fact that Trevor and Thomas are playing. I think they were both always going to play, but the fact that Trevor is at a loose head, Thomas at tight head, that for me is quite interesting because we're talking now, especially with the given the Oxen chair injury, who is going to be our fifth prop? We're taking Steven Kitshoff, we're taking Vincent Koch, we're taking Francois Herber, we're taking Oxen chair if he's fit. Who's going to be that fifth prop? And that's usually going to be a swing prop, so it kind of is between Trevor Nyakane or Thomas Toy. Look, we might take 6 props, but I think it's very unlikely that we do. And that, for me, is interesting. The fact that Thomas Toy is going to get an outing at tight head after having already played loose head. But Trevor Nyakane is a player who's played 50 tests for the Box, for example. So if he goes well this weekend, I think he would be the preferred fifth prop. Jean-Claude Hester, Marvin Ori, right. Now, this is not, I don't think it sounds like this was going to be the selection. Loic Diaga is sick. He has picked up flu, and it sounds like that has ruled him out of selection. So it sounds like it probably would have been Jean-Claude next to Marvin Ori, which for me would have, next to Loic Diaga, which for me would have made sense. Marvin Ori's played 2 games. We've seen what he's all about. I would have liked to have seen more game time into Loic Diaga. And I think that probably was the plan, except for the fact that he is sick. Loic Diaga, for example, will still go to the World Cup. So the question is now, is it a bit of a shootout between Jean-Claude and Marvin Ori? I think Marvin Ori is going to the World Cup, to be perfectly honest. I don't think Jean-Claude, even if he has a storm this weekend, will get in the system. The Box management have always kind of favoured system-based players who've been there around for a while. And that kind of thing. So I think that'll count against Jean-Claude. And I also think that Marvin Ori is on the back of 2 very good URC seasons, had a great game against Australia, and actually didn't do much wrong last weekend. He dropped 1 ball and everybody sort of had a go at him, but he made quite a few tackles. He got around the park. He's a very good line operator. So I'm not mad if he does go. I think we need to calm down in the John play and hype train after 1 game. It was a very good game. He played very well. But he's played 1 game for the Box, so I'll be surprised if he does go. Elsewhere, I think the loose trio is pretty straightforward. I think Franco Mostert at 7, I don't mind. They could have got him at 5, and you could have gotten somebody else in at flank, but I think they're very much looking at Franco Mostert as our second choice 7 in the Peach Death Toy role. They're quite similar. Very good line of operators, Franco Mostert, and I think that'll be a big thing of it. I think him and Marvin Ori will compete at the lineup quite nicely. Deon Faria gets to go. I'm interested to see whether he's in the plans. I really enjoyed the fact the cameos he's had off the bench for the Box. We know what he brings. He brings energy. He's very good over the ground. So it's taken a long time to get into the Box setup. But I think a year ago he was on the World Cup radar. Maybe doesn't seem to be as much on the radar now. So this is an opportunity to remind people. Jasper Wiese needs game time, and I'm seeing a lot of Evan Roos should have started over Jasper Wiese. Guys, Jasper Wiese has been one of the top 3 to 4 players in the Premiership for the last 2 seasons. It's taken a while to translate it into Box form, but he has had some absolutely storming games, and for me, is miles ahead of Evan Roos right now as a Test player. Evan Roos will get there. He'll play. He'll come off the bench, but I think it's a no-brainer. Jasper Wiese is going to the World Cup. Drake Meehan's going to the World Cup. Who starts? Who doesn't? We're not sure yet. Jasper Wiese for me was always going to start and should be starting. Spoke about Kobus Reinach. We knew that Miley Bok was going to start. Another nice opportunity for him. Now it's going to be a very hostile environment in Buenos Aires in Argentina. So it'll be the perfect type of environment where you can really test yourself, and so it's a really good acid test to see whether you can cope with the hostility at an international level. Mapimpi was going to get a chance. I was interested to see if they're going to go with Canan Moody or Kurt Lawrence. So they are going to go with Canan Moody. Mapimpi, I think, has got a bit to prove. I think Kurt Lawrence has done very well to sort of really put pressure on Mapimpi. Andre Esterhuizen was always going to start. I said that a week ago in the show when everybody was panicking about the fact that he wasn't picked last week, and I said that he'll 100% start next week and play a full 80 minutes, which is going to be the case. Lukanya, I'm at 13. I don't mind. I do think we need to get him as much game time as possible. And I think that Jesse Creel will get a good 20-25 minutes. And Damien Vincent was always going to play 15. So there's a couple of selections which were always quite straightforward, and some of them which have been a bit surprising. The bench, I think, is quite straightforward. No Lua Diaga means that 5-3 split, it just makes sense. Joseph Drever, Gerard Stenenkamp could make his test debut. Vincent Koch, Jean-Luc Dupree, Evan Roos, Herschel Yankees, Jesse Creel, Kirkley Arons. So it's a very nice bench. It's inexperienced in the likes of an Evan Roos, Jean-Luc Dupree from an international perspective. Gerard Stenenkamp, Joseph Drever, but I mean, Jesse Creel's got over 50 caps. Herschel Yankees is a World Cup winner. Vincent Koch's been around the park. Jean-Luc Dupree is inexperienced, maybe at international level, but has played plenty of rugby. So yeah, I like it. I think it's literally a World Cup trial team. You know, it was always going to be one scrum master was going to miss out because the way the cookie crumbled with having so many scrum masters in the squad, it was always going to be difficult to give them more game time. But apart from that, everyone who hasn't played a lot is going to get an opportunity. You know, Jean-Luc Dupree hasn't played, he's going to get to play. Evan Roos is going to get to play some minutes. Herschel Yankees is going to get a chance. Dion Faree's going to get a run out. So I think it ticks a lot of boxes with regards to giving players opportunities, which is probably the main thing about this game, to be honest. So yeah, and what's quite interesting actually is in the actual press release that initially went out, Lua Diaga was named in the lineup, so that kind of shows you that he was going to play, and then injury, and again, you know, Marvin Norrie's had 160 minutes or 100, probably about 130 odd minutes, has the 2 opportunities, so they kind of know what he's about, but very solid option. As I said, you know, I think we don't always see what other people see when it comes to locks. I'm not always looking for someone who is, you know, always going to run over somebody, bring out some wild offloads, do what Scott Barrett did this weekend, for example. But he's an incredibly solid performer, and I think he's actually been very good in the last 18 months and really deserves a spot there. But let me go to the comments and see what we're else saying. Campos earlier saying Hendrikse doesn't really give anything that Faf doesn't. Grant gives something completely different. Well, I think Hendrikse plays the Bok game plan very well. So as I said, at one stage I think it was going to be a Faf, Hendrikse, and then who else was going to join them type of situation. Jade says happy to see Andre give another run out. Double saying big Dupree fan, so wants him to start. Kara says well, certainly be a litmus test for some of these players, 100%. Diaga bad form against All Blacks, no selection. I think my bump guys. I mean, Lua Diaga is definitely going to the World Cup. You really think that John Clayton's going to come and have 2 good games? You're going to leave Lua Diaga? Not a chance. Pretender said, I'm quite shocked that Bong gets captain. No, Hendrikse kind of means that he isn't going to the World Cup. Looks like we'd actually see Creel at 10 if Orange is on for Willemse and Creel for Liebach. We'll never see Jesse Creel at 10. Ever. Ricardo saying would have played Mostert at 5 and Jean-Luc at 7. I'm quite saying I love the wing combo. As good as Colby is ball and ham, with our primary game plan being the up and under, 2 tall and physical winners are exactly what you need. Going through some of the other comments here. Neo says Box going to lose by 1 point. Ganji saying Theatre Priest saying it's still an excellent team. I'm glad they're giving Marnie more time at 10, 100%. Karim saying Yankees over Hendrikse is wild. Isn't this Dion's first test start? I think it could be, you know. I think it is. I'm trying to, actually haven't really got time to go through the entire release here. But let's go through the release and say exactly what it's got to say. So here we are. So Imbanami, who will be starting his 60th test cap, takes over the captaincy from Sia Khaleesi, but obviously Evan and Dwayne. Stenenkamp will potentially make his debut. He's the only uncapped player. He will become Springbok number 933 if he does come on. And the only 2 players retaining their places are Marnie Liebach and Marvin Ori, which wasn't supposed to be Ori. And what else have we got in here? And Nakanya, by the way, is vice captain. There we go, just checking that. Kirkley Arons did have a potential injury with his finger, but he's been cleared to play and he's on the bench. Let's go to some of the quotes. Right, so this is what Jacques Nielbar has said about the side. The selection includes plenty of Rugby World Cup and Castle Lager Lions Series winners, as well as a former Irish international in John Klein. And this just shows the quality of the depth we have, said Ninalba. We've been emphasizing the importance of giving as many players as possible a fair chance to show what they can do, with an eye on finalizing our Rugby World Cup squad. So we are pleased to give Herschel and Jean-Luc an opportunity to play. This is going to be a massive physical battle, and there will be a lot of pressure on the players mentally and physically, which is exactly the type of situation we would like to see them in as we enter our World Cup warm-up games. He said there's a fair bit of experience within the squad, and apart from Gerard, most of the players have been in the selection mix in the last 2 seasons. There is not a player in our enlarged squad who is fully confident that he'll be in the World Cup squad, so the competition for places is intense. Each one of our players is desperate for an opportunity to play, and it's evident in the way they've been training and in the hard work they've been doing off the field. So we're excited to see what they bring this weekend. Speaking about Argentina, he said that Argentina has shown in the last 2 seasons that they are a force to be reckoned with, and they are particularly tough to beat at home. They pride themselves on their physicality and set pieces, and they have an unbelievable fighting spirit, so we are anticipating another feisty battle against them. He's also confirmed that Director of Rugby Rassie Erasmus will join the squad on Thursday. He is currently working with the squad in Cape Town at the moment, and he will fly up apparently on Wednesday evening and join them on Thursday, so he will be there for the match. If we look at the caps, for example, they usually have the stats here. They don't really have the stats here. But in terms of our record against Argentina, we have won 31 games out of 35. We have drawn 1, and we have lost 3, which I think are all in Argentina. We have an 89% win percentage against Argentina, so a win would put us up over the 90%, which should be quite nice. Players with a lot of caps this weekend, well, over 50 caps, are the likes of Jesse Creel coming off the bench, has 60 caps. Jaden Hendrikse will be making a 60th appearance. Bongi Manambi will be making a 60th appearance. Luke Diogo will not be playing, so we're going to miss those caps. Franco Mostel making a 65th appearance. Those are sort of your big caps players in terms of number of caps. Let me go to some of the comments here. A lot of them are coming in quite quickly. Thierry van den Berg says, Bongi needs to lead by example this game. No ref back chat. Well, maybe that's why they've given it to him and sort of a bit of, right, well, you keep chatting to them. You've got a license now, so understand what you can and can't say. Daniel says, I love how we can give so many guys a run out and still put out a quality team. Meredith saying, still waiting for the day Moody's unleashed at 13. Well, we'll have to see it at the Bulls before we see it at the box. Robert says, Hendricks is good for passing the ball to the forward, similar to Farid Priya. Thierry van den Berg saying, let's play him at 13 for the box first here. For the Bulls first before letting him near the box jersey. Amir saying, this probably means that Jaden won't make the World Cup squad. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit earlier. Stephen van der Space said that we could lose. We could very well lose. In fact, I think we put it this way, we're not the favourites going into this game, I don't think. Apikila said, did a player like Tunu just completely fall outside the radar, or is it a result of the Sharks' poor UR season? I don't know, actually. We had quite a lot of debate about that when he was left out, in terms of how do you go from being in the pecking order to bringing in a brand new player ahead of him, which is very unlike the current Springbok management. Captain Crunch said, I'm curious to find out why they get JK in the squad if they had no intention of taking him to the World Cup. None of our locks were injured when they picked him. Well, we need another option at 4, to be fair. If we get injuries, then he comes into the mix. But I don't think he'll go to the World Cup. But as we've seen, Sia Khaleesi currently injured, Oxenchair currently injured, Andre Park currently injured. If Evan Etibet goes down, then I think Jean Klein gets into the mix quite quickly. The game is on Saturday at 9 o'clock. And we are playing in Buenos Aires, over in Argentina. Which is it's a pretty formidable place to play rugby as Argentina. It's very, very hostile and a bit of a cauldron really to play your rugby. Lots of very passionate Argentinian fans. It's also going to be Augustin Creevy could be making his 100th. Well, he's probably set to make his 100th appearance, first ever Argentinian player to play 100 games for his nation. So that's going to be a really cool sort of occasion. It'll be interesting to see if they actually think about starting him. I'd be very surprised, but from a sentimental point of view, they might try that. Chian says, what do we do if this team performs better than the one last week? Do we assume the difference is the players, the game plan, the execution? It's a very good question, isn't it? And you've got players here who I think could be putting themselves in the mix. I think players who could play themselves into potentially your top 23 are an Andre Esterhuizen. Marty Leibach has got an opportunity to try and put some pressure on Andre Pollard. Jasper Wiese has got an opportunity to put some pressure on Dwayne Vermeulen. I think Franco Mostert could put some pressure on getting into that 23. Dion Ferry, I think he's got a big opportunity to put himself in the World Cup mix. Kane Moody could maybe, if he outplays Maxwell and Mapimpi, could be sitting there saying, well, maybe I'm a better choice to him. I mean, we're never going to leave Mapimpi behind, but just put that sort of doubt into the coach's head. I don't think the likes of Jean-Luc Dupre, Evan Ruiz, Herschel Young, because I don't think they've really got enough opportunity, even this weekend, if they play well. I don't think they get to the World Cup. Jose Davis is going to go to the World Cup, for example, already. Yeah. Why not start Evan Ruiz? Because I think Jasper Wiese is better and needs the game time more. I think Evan Ruiz getting some game time is pretty good, but I don't think he should be in. I don't think he'll go to the World Cup. Malcolm Verstappen should start, or he's not even in the squad. He's back in South Africa. So MC saying, I think it means hope Am gets back on form. If not, Damien should be the pick. Hello, Trent. Hope you're well. No, Damien, no, I'm sorry. I will disagree with you on that one. If Lukanya Am doesn't start at 13, Jesse Creel starts at 13. We've seen Damien Delende at 13, and for me, it just doesn't work. During the match, if we have to shift him, we can, but I don't think we should ever be starting with Damien Delende at 13. I think our defensive system just doesn't operate as well as when he does. Benjamin saying, I want to see Arons to come out at 15 for the bench. Could be very exciting. We could see Am at 12 with Creel at 13. If not, Willems, I don't think we'd see. I think we'd see Willems in at 12, Creel at 13, and Am onto the wing before we saw an Am at 12, Creel 13 situation. Kevin saying Kobala should be a Bok. Well, he's got a shot. He's got an opportunity after the World Cup to get himself into the mix. So MC saying Caden under the high ball's on point. Our backline was not great under the high ball. Let's hope they improve. Otherwise, Caden all day. Look, it's an interesting. I think that he would be a wildcard pick, wouldn't he? I suppose it's a bit like if you were dared to take Grant Williams, for example, that would be a proper wildcard pick in terms of not somebody you kind of expected, maybe not somebody that was in the radar, but has kind of sort of hammered the door down and made himself, undroppable from the squad. So, I mean, as I said, what's interesting is that this coaching staff, for example, has traditionally been quite, I wouldn't say boring, but pretty consistent with their selections. There's no doubt that there is a bit of room for surprise selections. And the big thing, and this is an interesting thing with regards to the selection, is the fact that they like players who can play in the game plan, but they also really enjoy a player that's got something a bit different. And that's why we've got a Quaka Smith, a Dion Ferree, a Malcolm Verstappen, who are all options at 6, for example, but all very different players. You've got a Franco Master, a Jean-Luc Dupre, a PSGF Toy, all very different players. Can cover the sort of similar positions. But I mean, look at our 3-8s. Dwayne Vermeulen versus Jasper Wiese versus Evan Ruiz. Very different players. You've got Dwayne Vermeulen, who's probably more the all-round player, good over the ball, very important defensively, very physical in the way he carries, very good under the high ball, for example. Jasper Wiese, who's an absolute battering ram, just runs over people for fun. He's probably one of the most physical players in the world. Starting to bring down his defense, but maybe has struggled a little bit over the high ball and maybe not as good over the ball. Evan Ruiz is someone who is very explosive, very quick. He is very physical, but not in the same way that Jasper Wiese is. In a tighter game, for example, Jasper Wiese will get over the advantage line more. Evan Ruiz likes to run around in the trams, for example, a bit more, and likes to sort of hit some gaps. Probably a little bit better over the ground than Jasper Wiese is, but I think Jasper Wiese is probably a better defender. So it's interesting how you got so many players in the same position, but they're all slightly different. And that's the same thing when you look at our wings. Mapimpi, Kirkley, Cheslin, Kane Moody, they're all quite different players. I mean, it's very lazy analysis to say, well, Kirkley and Cheslin are the same player because they're, short kind of guys in the scrum cap. They do things very differently, and with the way they tackle's very different. Kane Moody's quite a different player. Marcus Mapimpi's quite a different player. I mean, he was out and out paced, quite lethal finisher, gotten himself a lot better under the high ball. Kane Moody is someone who probably looks for more space and likes to step inside, move around. He's probably got a better footwork than Mapimpi, who's just kind of that out and out pace type player. Not to say he doesn't have footwork, but he's one of those things where if you're giving him half a gap, he will run in trials all day. Same thing as Lacagnan versus JC Creel, and Andre Esthuizen versus Damien Delendi. Lots of players in similar positions, but very different type of players. So looking at some of the comments here, Daniel saying, Steve, who else would you have there that you think could use this as a chance to prove themselves? Well, I think Jaden Hendrikse is obviously the big absentee and the big one that does miss out. I feel desperately sorry for him because I think he should have been in the World Cup next if he was fit. And I think the death of his father and him having to withdraw from the squad probably was the final sort of nail in the coffin for his World Cup chances. Look, we might be wrong. In a week's time, they're announcing the squad. And we might be having to eat our words, but I think that he's been a victim of a situation, and that's a big shame. I would have liked to have seen Lourdes Diago because I think he needs a bit more game time, but he's sick, so that's why he's not there. So that's not a tactical thing; that's just a reality thing. Apart from that, I want to see JC Creel get half an hour with Andre Esthuizen. I think it's important that those two play together. What else do I want to see? I'd like to see Herschel Yankees get a decent run, see if he's got something to offer. I want to see Franco Mostert potentially go the distance. I'd rather see Jean-Luc Dupré come in at lock, or else if he goes to the flank, see Franco Mostert shift to rocks. I think Franco Mostert is an incredibly important player. He's been one of our best players. And I'd like to see him get 80 minutes under his belt. I'd like to see Dion Ferreira get 80 minutes under his belt and really show us from the get-go where he's at. Jasper Wiese will be replaced, but I'm not worried about him. He's played a stupid amount of rugby over the last year, so it's not about form for him. It's about getting him up to freshness and in the best sort of physical state. I think Thomas Toy and Trevor Nikani are kind of under the spotlight a little bit with regards to who's going to be that fifth prop. Apart from that, Jean Clay can have a great game, and I don't think he maybe creates a bit of doubt, but I don't think he does a lot. So I think the makeup, but yeah, maybe if he has a storm where they have to rethink a few things. Bongi Manambi, he's not been in great form, so I'd like to see him really bring back that form. Bongi Manambi and Malcolm Marx will be our two hookers in the most World Cup games. That's really not a. We kind of know that. That's not really up for debate. But I think he needs a bit of form there. Stefan says, will need to show that he still wants to play rugby. Ganjay saying, I think we should start mixing and just stick with consistency with grass team selection. Well, I think this is the last time we will see these kind of changes. I think we will then go with two very settled sides against New Zealand and against Wales. Then we'll have our best side against Scotland. We'll rotate against Romania, our best side against Ireland, and potentially rotate against Tonga if we can win those first three games, because then the Tonga game doesn't become as important. So JDT Lourdes Diago is sick. Stefan Berg says Broke equals Evan Rush should be the blockade. Woke equals Frankie Horn should be the blockade. Frankie Horn should be the blockade. I mean, come on, people. Back my boy Frankie Horn. Like, the GOAT. Next Warren Whiteley. It's going to be wild. Look at his try scoring record last season. Double says, assuming Sia is fit, do you leave out both Paris and Van Staden? I think you probably take one of them. I thought they were going to potentially take Dion Ferreira, but maybe Mark Van Staden's giving himself a better chance. I do think that, for example, Kwagga Smith is in my 23 regardless. And it's about whether it's Marco or Sia in the 23. I think that Kwagga Smith will be in our final 23. I think if probably coming off the bench or playing at 7, you never know. But I think Peter Steps, Troy Dwayne and Kwagga Smith could work quite nicely. And I think Marco Van Staden could potentially start, and then you'll see Kwagga coming off the bench. So I think he's so versatile. He can play across all three positions at the back. That I do think he's found himself in that 23. Purely from the match 23, who do you think is not going to the Rugby 12 Cup 2023? I don't think Jean Klein is. I don't think Moody is. I don't think Dion Ferreira is. Kira Sinnekamp is not. Jean-Luc Dupré is not. I don't think Evan Lewis is. I don't think Herschel Yankees is. I think everybody else probably goes. And Thomas Latoya or Trevor Nikani, one of them I don't think goes. I kind of feel like Evan is more Sia type Lucy, very rough and too hot-headed. Yeah, I think we know that he needs to work on a discipline a little bit. There's definitely work-ons. But we know he's got the talent. It's just about him sort of channeling that. He's got plenty of time as well. These old guys can't possibly bring home the World Cup again. With all due respect, there needs to be more young guys in the team with a few experience in key positions. Well, actually, statistically speaking, you're wrong, because statistically speaking, a squad with a higher average age has actually historically won the World Cup. That is why we have looked to give, and it's also it's all about how many. And if you look at how many test caps, for example, in lineups and the average amount, experience has always trumped youth and stuff over the years. We weren't a particularly young squad last World Cup. We weren't an old squad because a lot of these players are still involved. But you had a 10-time Tarariro who's had over 100 caps. You had a France Wallot. You had a France Stain, for example. You had a lot of players who had lots and lots of caps in their history. So yeah, that is. So I'm not saying that you're wrong in terms of saying that they will win the World Cup, but I'm just saying statistically and historically speaking, experience has won the World Cup more often than sort of youth and young players. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be playing young players, but yeah, I mean, if you look at, for example, the last 23 and what's going to change. Auction Chairs in the mix, for example, wasn't in the mix 2023. I think, potentially got a Kurt Lawrence, for example, who's suddenly sort of back in the mix. A lot of these players, a lot of these players aren't even that old. Bongi Benambi could play the next World Cup. Jean Klein could play the next World Cup. Marvin Ory could potentially. How old is Marvin Ory these days? I don't think he's even that old, actually. I'm saying the one after this. Yeah, Marvin will be 34 in the next World Cup, so he's not that old. Dion Free would not make the World Cup. Franco Masters getting on the older side. Jasper Wiese will very much will be in the mix for the next World Cup. Kovac Renoff, maybe not. My Liebach definitely. Mapimpi probably not. Esther Hazen could be. The Kanya how old's the Kanya? He's about 30, I think. 29. So he could be around the next World Cup. Kenny Moody will be around the next World Cup. Damien Williams will be around the World Cup. So a lot of these players, I don't think they're that as old as we think they are. We also, I think, what we're seeing, for example, in the last couple of years, is that players are playing until they're much older anyway. Graham Vermeulen has been one of our best players this season. He's also our oldest player. Johnny Sexton was nominated for the World Player of the Year last year, and he is going to be one of the oldest, if not the oldest player in the World Cup when he goes. So for me, form, class, pedigree, experience all count a lot, and probably more than just age. Who will become captain when Bongi and comes off? Well, I think the idea is that they won't. I think Lekanya could be shifting to the wing, and Creel could come on at center. But if they do go off, then I imagine if he's still on, I think a Master probably. I would think he'll be more obvious go-to. Nobody off the bench really. I think Jesse Creel maybe, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think the plan is for both of them to come off. Tsepo's saying, hope Liebach has another solid game so he can become the second fly half option instead of Willemse. Rather have Willemse on the bench, plus Liebach is a recognised kicker important for test games. I don't think Damien Willemse starts the game of fly half for the World Cup. Unless there's an injury, I don't think he's going to be starting a game at fly half for the World Cup. I think that Pollard will start all the big games, and I think the 2 games we do retain, I think Liebach will start. But I do think the Willemse will play every single game in the World Cup. I think he'll come off the bench for every single game, and maybe start those 2 rotated games. Christo is saying, apart from our front 5 on the current form, every single in the All Blacks team is better than our 7 to 15. Talking about in general or in this specific side? Because I think front 5, I would disagree with that as well, because Scott Barrett for me is one of the most informed players in world rugby right now. Yeah, look, I mean, the All Blacks are on great form. Look, they've only played 3 teams and looked really good this year compared to last year. So maybe we're arguing ahead of ourselves with regards to are they back. But yeah, I mean, look, I mean, I don't think Artie Severe has been as good as he was last year, for example, in the last few games. Is Sam Kane versus PSTF 12? I think they both looked a little bit. Sam Kane for me was actually pretty good in the Argentina game. Looked a lot better, but then got injured. So we haven't seen enough of him for me to confidently say he streaks ahead of PSTF the toy. So maybe I'd argue for that one. Aaron Smith is world class. Richie Mwanga is world class. If Pollard came back and was playing good rugby, I think you'd argue he's probably better than Mwanga potentially, depending on which one's on the form and which one you want to have. Same with Lakanya for example. If Lakanya gets to get back to his best form, he is better than Rico Awani. But yeah, look, it's a good All Black 15. There's no doubt. I mean, 23. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, so Alton definitely not going to France then. Well, he's actually been released from the squad, so yeah, definitely not going to France. Was Arcus name and rested? He's back down here in South Africa with the rest of the squad. Mark Dunn saying, thinking Makazola and Kanan will be good to see with contestable kicks. And so MC saying, Damien is one of the best players, but as a bench warmer, sad to see what happened to New Zealand for a while with Barrett. I like them for a while as well. Damien Williamson will play 50, maybe even 100 tests for the Boks. Damien Williamson will play many games for the Boks. Unfortunately, right now, he's in a situation where he's struggling to find game time, but he will take over from Willie Leroux. He could very well take it from Damien Delendy. He's played 27 games. He's 25 years old. He'll play at least another 5 or 6 this year, so he'll be in his 30. He'll have played over 30 games at 25 years old. So I think he'll hit 50 by the time he's 27. And yeah, I think he could very easily play 70, 80 tests for South Africa. I think he becomes he's a fixture in any 23. Put it that way, even if he doesn't start. It is a bit of a difficult one because he's an incredibly talented player. But for example, with the way Willie Leroux is playing at the moment, it's just so much more important to the way we play and what we need than Damien Willemse, unfortunately. So yeah, I suppose it's just one of those things, isn't it? Albert says All Blacks needed to peak early because they kick off in France, with France in France. And Lorenz says just worried about our game plan, combining plan A and plan B. We try to kick more expansive, but then we struggle with kicking game and high balls. The older you slowly become, that's why Boks are seeing ghosts in New Zealand. I mean, New Zealand team's not that young, just by the way. I mean, they're not like a bunch of 24-year-olds running around. I mean, your Richie Mwanga is what? I think turning 30 this year, 29 years old. Aaron Smith, who is, one of the reasons why we're chasing Shadow, he's 35 this year. Antonina Brown is sort of late 20s, but I mean, you look at the pack as well. Brody Retallick is still operating. Sam Kane is still playing. Artie Severe is still playing. I mean, Artie Severe is 30 this year. So yeah, I don't think it's that easy. You look at the Irish squad, as I said. You look at Johnny Sexton, and look at how well he's playing. Look at a Ty Furlong, who's probably one of the best tight ends, if not the best tight end in the world. He's 31 this year. I don't think we can go young equals better. But anyway, going to wrap up there, people. Thank you very much. We will be live again tomorrow to sort of break this down again, kind of talk a bit about this weekend, and we'll have an Argentina lineup on Thursday. So that'll be quite cool to see exactly who we're going to be playing against. As I said, Augustin Creevy potentially, set to become the first player ever to play 100 tests for Argentina, which should be a really cool moment to be a part of. What a player. But it should be a pretty cool occasion. Please do smash like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel. And we've got the press conference, which is going to be live in about 15 minutes. So you guys can go check out exactly why Jacques Nienaber has not selected Jaden Hendrikse, why he selected this team, why he selected Bongi Manam as captain, and what the plan is. People, keep well, and I'll see you guys all tomorrow.